students, so we're going to review over the issue brief, what to expect, how to start creating your issue brief. So I'm going to go over some stuff that's listed here on the D2L site and hopefully work to answer a couple questions that you might have out there. So think back to when we first were discussing issue briefs and how they're almost a combination of a research paper combined with a story that you would tell your best friend. You know, you have this issue that you want the public to be just as passionate about as you are. So how do you grab their attention? How do you kind of bring them into the information that you're giving them to make them care as much as you are? And so what we do is we set that up in the form of an issue brief. So I'm going to go through the details of the brief first, and then we'll look at a couple places that you can go for some different points of information. So if you're on the D2L side, if you'll navigate over to content and go down to assignments, you'll see a submodule in there called issue brief assignments. So we'll go over there, and the first document you'll see is issue brief instructions. Now I've went ahead and pulled it up here so we wouldn't have to wait for it to load on D2L. Now this document, issue brief instructions, is going to give you all the information you need to do your issue brief and to write it up for submission. So we'll go through a couple of these point by points to hopefully offer a little bit of clarification. Let's start here with this first bolded sentence. What your assignment to do for your issue brief is to pick any issue in healthcare. You could pick heart disease in women, you could pick value-based purchasing, you could pick mental health, you could pick AIDS treatments. You can pick any topic that exists out in healthcare and tell me what the effect that the Affordable Care Act had on that topic. So let's say you picked heart disease. What was reimbursement like? What were quality indicators like? What was the general state of heart disease itself before the Affordable Care Act was implemented? So what did reimbursement look like? How many people suffered from heart disease? And then after the ACA was implemented, were there certain programs, were there certain reimbursement structural changes that were implemented that overall affected heart disease and how we care for it? Did it change, you know, the way we treat it, different things such as that? So I've listed some suggestions here about different things you can write on if you're kind of stuck on a topic. So the impact of the ACA on the level of insurance we have. You can pick a particular state's Medicaid program, and as you'll recall, in Tennessee we have TennCare, but you can pick any state's particular Medicaid program. Now I would not suggest writing as Medicaid as a whole, but picking a state in particular. You can look at things like the private insurance marketplace that drastically changed with the health exchanges. You can even look at insurance requirements in regards to small businesses. You can take mental health. Health information technology is another one. We can look at the effects overall that it's had on rural hospitals. We've seen a lot of rural hospitals close. What about the effects that it's had on the workforce in general? Again, you know, quality of care, different types of payment reform. You can also write on chronic disease. You know, pick a different type of chronic disease like congestive heart failure, COPD. What effects did the ACA have on the topic that you're choosing to write on? And like I said, I've given you a couple here to kind of get you thinking. This is not an all-inclusive list, so if you want to write on something that's not listed here, just let me know. And pretty much any topic is up for grabs right now. You can write on how the ACA affected our, you know, we just went to the Mountain Home Museum. We learned a lot about military history in terms of healthcare. So You could write on how the ACA affected TRICARE, which is the government's insurance program that they give to those that are in the military. So as I say right here, this list is not all inclusive. So if you have a topic of interest, just run it by me. Let's talk about it and make sure that it's a good topic, that you're going to have a lot of information to write on when you sit down to start your brief. So we go from kind of the general overview here and the general details of the assignment to more of the specific instructions. So again, you're just going to be working on this brief that really takes the information that we've talked about in class, the research that you've done, and how you can present this information on your topic. So I'm really looking for you to really synthesize and analyze all of this information that you've collected over the course of the semester. The specifications, again, for the brief are 1,400 to 1,700 words. And I will be looking at word count, so make sure you're at that between that 1,400 to 1,700 word mark. And you need to have between 2 and 4 figures here. Now, figures are not just pictures. What I'm looking for is some type of graph, some type of infographic, something that adds to the content that you're presenting in your issue brief. So it has to, in some way, relate back to your issue brief. It can't just be some kind of random picture that you stuck in there. That won't count as one of your figures. So make sure that you are putting something in there that's meaningful, that relates in or expands on the information that you're presenting. Now again, we're pulling a little bit from emerging technology here. We're looking to make sure that you can make this issue brief really aesthetically pleasing, because remember, we don't want to have that research paper feel. We want it to think a lot more along the lines of some type of magazine article. We want people to read this, and generally we don't want to read research papers. So if it's set up like that, you may deter a lot of your potential audience from reading about your topic. So, and I'll go over a few examples here in just a second. But how can we really, work to make this issue brief really aesthetically pleasing? What can we put in there in terms of borders, headers, pictures, something to really enhance the aesthetic value and really draw people in to read the information? So again, not a research paper per se. That's not the feel that we're going for here. We're really just working to educate the general population on this important topic. So you pick this topic, it's important to you. How can you make people care about your issue as much as you care about your issue? Now, what I don't want to see is just a recycled sea of facts and figures like I have here. I'm looking to see that you are really understanding and comprehending the content, and you can take facts and figures that you found throughout your research and really work to create a story. And again, like I said, I've got some examples that I'll pull up here in a second, and we'll go over those, and I'll point out a couple different things that past students have done. Now, as far as suggestions and advice on really how to organize through your issue brief, I've given you kind of a general outline here. Again, this is nothing set in stone, so feel free to take this or leave this, but this is my advice to you on really how, if you're struggling on how to structure your issue brief, this is my suggestion here. And again, just a general format on what you might want to consider. So first, frame up your issue by really explaining the policy and what its intended effect was. So remember, the first thing before this even that you want to have is, what is that hook, that line, that one-liner sentence that's going to bring the audience into your issue brief, and then start talking about, here was the policy and here was what was supposed to happen as a result of that policy. So explain what particular issue you're looking at and why the policy that was put in place was put in place, and if it's working as it was intended when it was created. Then you can move to discuss the current status of the policy right now and how it was implemented. Again, how is it working? Does it seem to be working in your opinion? Why or why not? And don't just stop at whether it's working or not, but go a step further and start to tell me from your research why you feel one way or another, why you feel it's working or why it's not, and how can you back up what you're saying through some data that you've discovered. My next piece of advice would be, what are the implications, if the ACA does go through repeal and the particular policy that you're looking at is repealed as a result of that, what are the implications of that being repealed? Are so much percentage of the population going to be uninsured once again? Or are we going to have a huge shift of our population off of private insurance to public insurance because now they don't qualify to buy private insurance because they don't make enough? Are we going to have a huge amount of that same population stuck kind of in the middle? They make too much to qualify for government programs and they don't make enough to buy private insurance. So what do you anticipate the effects to be if the policy that you're looking at is repealed? And then sum it up with your summary paragraph, and your references should be listed there at the end. The next piece of information is in regards to your references, and we'll go out and look at a couple different sources for references here in just one second. But you're not going to be able to write this issue brief just taking the book that we're using in class and your notes. You're going to have to go out and find some outside resources. The good thing is there's really no shortage of information regarding any topic that you can think of in its relation to the Affordable Care Act. You should be able to find multiple reports, multiple papers written, even multiple issue briefs themselves, and you're all welcome to use all of that as your references. We're looking for peer-reviewed references here. So what we want to do is make sure that we're, again, using those peer-reviewed references. We're not going out and using blogs, newspaper articles, Wikipedia, things like that as your primary source of information. Now, what I don't want to see here is just a copy and paste. I know every now and then you're going to have to stick some word for word information in there from one of your sources, but I don't want to just see a copy and paste over and over and over again. I want to see how you are taking the information and running it through your head and how you're understanding it and kind of putting it in your own words. I will be looking that you've cited all your materials, and for purposes of the issue brief, I do prefer the Superscript method, which you can see that here is just the Superscript with the number 1. Now if we scroll, I'll show you real quick. If you have questions on how to do Superscript and how to do that type of reference, if you'll still go back to issue brief assignments under our assignment module, scroll down to reference citation. I've put a link in here to a video to show you how to superscript in Word. So we'll go back to our instructions, and I prefer the superscript method simply because it's easier for me to read your issue brief with the superscript. However, that's not required. That's just a preference of mine. And here's how you would cite that superscript on your reference page. The next piece of information is in regards to your annotated bibliography. So since you guys are working on that, that's due this coming week. We'll skip over that. Just remind you that I do use turnitin.com for your issue briefs, and so I'm looking for no more than 30% return rate on turnitin.com. So when you turn it in to turnitin.com, you will get a feedback report in the Dropbox, a little bar graph that tells you what your percentage return rate is, and I'm looking for 30% or less. So if you're turning your paper in, now here's the caveat to that. If you turn your paper in, you get let's say you get a 45 to 50% score, you redo a couple things, you submit it again, your score the next time actually may be higher, 60, 70, 80, 90%, because your first paper is now in that collection of documents that Turnitin is comparing to. So don't take the score for face value. Pull up your report, see where the duplication is, and go in and make the necessary adjustments. Now, I will give I'll spend a little bit of time on your presentation instructions here, so that I can hopefully clarify some questions that were out there. You will be required to give a presentation over your issue brief topic. That presentation does need to last 3 to 5 minutes, and I'll be determining who's going to go when here within the next couple weeks, so just be prepared to go whenever I assign you. It will be 3 to 5 minutes, and like I said, I'm looking for you to discuss your individual topic and the findings throughout your research. You're going to be limited to one slide. And on this slide, you're going to outline your 3 to 5 major points that you think are the most important you want to convey out to your course mates. Additionally to these 3 to 5 major points you want to convey, you must address one of these following questions. Either why did you choose this particular topic over others? So what was kind of your driving force behind choosing this topic? Or you can address the other question, which is, what is one new item that you learned as a result of this issue brief activity? So it could be, something you learned as a result of the information itself, or a new skill that you picked up and learned. So I'm looking for you to address not only your 3 to 5 major key points, but also to address one of these particular questions. Now, I've given an example slide from a past student here to give you a little visual on what I'm going for. So this particular student wrote of the Affordable Care Act's effects on rural health care delivery, and here were a couple of their key talking points. So they talked about in terms of rural health and the Affordable Care Act, they talked about the effect on the uninsured rate, the new coverage options, the healthier population piece, and the increase to access. I want to make sure to point out and note, you are required to attend each day of presentations, or you will forfeit 5% of your final issue brief grade. So if you foresee any reason that you won't be able to make it to all 3 sessions for your issue brief, please let me know as soon as possible, but your attendance is required. And just like with every other class, I will be taking attendance those days, and if you do not come to class and you're not in attendance, you will forfeit 5% of your final issue brief grade. So that's the kind of fairly, not really, but fairly quick overview of the issue brief and what's required. Again, all this information is contained on the issue brief instruction document that's on D2L. So let's first look at a couple example issue briefs, and then we'll look at a couple different places to go for some points of information. So the first one I want to bring up, this is a former student of mine, and she wrote about the healthcare workforce and the effects that the Affordable Care Act had on the healthcare workforce. So you can see here she's got some really great graphics. She put a great introduction graphic back here at the very beginning. She used a great tagline here about healthcare job growth. If I'm going into healthcare, that's going to grab my attention really quickly. You can see she started with the background of the issue, made that appropriate headline. We go down into the body of the issue brief, You can see it's not set up like your normal research paper. You see she's used columns to make it look really neat and clean and crisp. She's continued talking about the issue brief or the topic background here. And then she's moved into her focus. She's talking about primary care. So she starts out with her subheading of physicians. She gives some information about physicians. Really nice here. She's included a little key facts box. Maybe not information that she's talking about directly within the body of her issue brief, but a couple of important key points that she wants to make sure to point out to her readers. She's got a very nice graphic here that she's using to expand on some information that she's presenting. We keep on going down. We see her next subtopic under primary care revolves around nurses. And then we see a couple other different topics that she's going to talk about under other solutions, like the National Health Service Corps. And you can see she's got some nice graphics here that tie into what she's talking about with the National Health Service Corps. She then moves to topics outside primary care. And again, this is all revolving around the workforce and the effect the Affordable Care Act had on it. So she's talking about mental health here as a sector. She's talking about home health here. And then she moves into financial incentives and how that has been affected, because more often than not, everything is tied to money. So she talks about that piece. And then she has a really nice summary statement where she sums up everything she's discussed in the brief and then ends with her references, very nicely laid out with all the hyperlinks working. I can go and check in on any of her references if I need to. They're all very nicely laid out, and you can see her brief overall. Very crisp, clean, doesn't look like a research paper, more along the lines of a magazine type article. Very nice graphics to kind of pull you and draw you into the brief itself. Now that's one student example. Again, that's available on D2L for you. Another student example I want to show you is another way a student laid theirs out, which is perfectly acceptable. I just wanted to give you two different aspects on how students have approached this issue brief assignment in the past. So this particular person, he wrote about the effects of coverage for HIV infected persons in the Affordable Care Act. So he actually started his with an abstract, which is perfectly fine. This is a great little intro, insight into what he's going to be discussing. Great way to get the reader interested. Talks about Medicaid expansion and how it ties back into insurance for those with HIV. Great graphic that ties back into the information he's talking about. You can see here, compared to the other, let's put them side by side. Compared to the other student's issue brief, he does not use columns here. That's perfectly fine. As we go on down, you can see he talks about the health insurance marketplace, the effects it had back into that, and then he talks about the effects of the ACA expansion. So he sums up with his findings as we continue to move on down, and then sums up with his summary statement and his references. So two different ways that you can lay your issue brief out. It's personal preference. Both of these were really great examples. Students, did a great job here, followed the outline, wrote on their topic and how the ACA had affected their particular topic. They used really great references, and laid those out really well. So again, those are available to you on D2L. We'll scroll over, I'll show you how to get to them. If you'll go, again, just go to your assignment module, go down to issue briefs. When you get to the issue brief module, we'll scroll on down and we'll go to example issue briefs, and there's student issue brief 1 and 2. Now there are two others listed here. These are professional ones that were taken from professional journals, and you can see how these were laid out. So it looks, more of a combination between the two student examples that are provided. So you can also use those as a reference on how to maybe aesthetically lay out your issue brief overall. So a lot of great information. Again, just go to your issue brief assignments. There's a lot of good information posted in here, but if you'll focus on your issue brief instructions, and as long as you follow those, you should be fine in writing your issue brief. Now, I've had some people come to me concerned about finding information on their topic, so I want to take us over to Shared Library and their site real quick. So if you'll just go to Shared Library from the ETSU homepage, you should come to their main homepage site. If you'll scroll over to Top Databases, a primary database that we use in our particular field is called PubMed. Now you have free access to this as an ETSU student. And I'll go ahead and get logged in here. So give me 1 second. So I've gotten logged into PubMed here, and what you can do is type in your topic here at the top. So let's start with mental health and Affordable Care Act. Lots of great information that comes up here. We've got 425 articles that have something to do between mental health and the Affordable Care Act. So there's plenty of information out there no matter what your topic is. PubMed is a great resource to use. You can also go to a website called ResearchGate would be another good one. Google Scholar would be another great one that you can go and search. Google Scholar works the same as PubMed. Put in your information. You can sort by date. You can pull from the last 5 years. And remember, when we're searching for our information, anything over 5 to 7 years is considered outdated. And even then, you want to keep it within the last, couple years, last 2 or 3 years. Here's what ResearchGate looks like. Again, this is a free service. You can access this through the Shared Library. They have all kinds of databases. If you'll just scroll to View All Databases, you can see all different ones that you're able to access here. So there's no shortage of information out there. Plenty of resources to go to find the information you need. If you're having trouble or a little unsure how to use these databases or how to use PubMed or ResearchGate or Google Scholar, just come see me. I'll be happy to sit down. We can walk through it and look at it together. But just wanted to show you Shared Library, make sure you knew where PubMed was. And I believe there's also a database in here that's nothing but public health images. So we'll go over to, let's look for it. We'll go over to View All Databases, scroll over to P for public health. We'll scroll down, and if you're needing infographics, Public Health Image Library, there you go. We also have Public Health Database. So plenty of information there. Public Health Image Library, we'll pull that up real quick. That links out to the CDC. They're going to be able to provide you with all kinds of images that you need, pretty much any category that you're looking at. So again, just all kinds of great information out there. There should be no shortage of information for your issue brief assignments. I hope this was able to answer some questions that you had on your issue brief. Again, I pulled all of this off of D2L. If you'll review over the instructions, you should be right on track. But as always, feel free to call me, to stop by the office, to shoot me an email If you're still a little unsure about something, or especially if you have any questions, I don't want anybody to be out there confused. So shoot me an email. Let me know if you're experiencing any kind of issues or if I can offer any assistance, because this should be a really good activity, a really good assignment rather, that you're not doing it just to do an assignment, but you're doing it rather to increase your knowledge base. You really should be learning something from this assignment. So I hope this is able to answer some questions, guys. Again,